Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first event of the Roundtable Series on Early Care in Facilities hosted by Build Up California. This series is part of Building Blocks for an Equitable Recovery Initiative, through which we explore the most effective strategies to equitably expand, improve, and sustain early learning care facilities as we face and recover from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Ericka Erickson, and since May 2020, I have been the Policy and Program Officer for Early Care and Education at the Low Income Investment Fund. As a Program Policy Officer for a Low Income Investment Fund, I have the honor to coordinate the development of Build Up California, a statewide network of early learning facility champions launched just last year. In this roundtable series that we are starting today, we will shine a light on issues related to ECE facilities in the greater Los Angeles area, but the topics are relevant to other areas around the country as well. The greater Los Angeles is the second largest urban region area in the United States, with a population of 19 million and encompassing 5 counties: Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Ventura, Riverside, and Orange County. So grab a chair and let's prepare for this roundtable. From wherever you are watching this, we hope that you and your family are healthy and your communities are strong. Before we start and introduce our guest speakers, I want to invite you to join me on reflecting on the unprecedented crisis caused by the global spread of coronavirus and its variants now. For 18 months, we have been in the pandemic, which laid bare some of the most painful social problems, including inequality and racism. But the pandemic is only one of the disasters we have been facing. The wildfires in our state, hurricanes and floodings around the country, and wars abroad only make the lives of our families and communities more difficult. But together, we can overcome all of this if we take action to support all directly affected and stand in solidarity to make a positive difference, especially in our communities, making our village more resilient to similar events while addressing systemic and social and racial inequalities. So how can we work together to make our early care and education field more equitable, sustainable, and resilient? As we have been seeing around the country, investments in early childhood educators are the most critical driver of childcare quality and supply. Additionally, facilities are a key element of creating a high quality childcare experience in centers and family childcare homes. Well-functioning, comprehensive ECE systems, including investments in facilities, as it complements other components of early care and education. So as we embark in these dialogues about ECE facilities and their importance, we want to thank our state leaders, including legislators, staff, and the governor, for recognizing the importance of investing in ECE infrastructure by allocating $250 million to the California Child Care and Development Infrastructure Grant Program as part of the 2021 and 22 state budget. This allocation is aligned with the guidance outlined in our state ECE master plan, which was created last year with the participation of thousands of stakeholders. Parts of these funds are from the American Rescue Plan, 100 million of it, which will be used for repair and renovation of ECE facilities. This is only one example of how federal relief funds can be used. So we are glad to have here with us some experts to share the information, insights on how federal relief funds can be invested in ECE facilities. So I want to invite them to come on the screen. And so I can introduce them. First of our first speaker is Carolyn Ho, General Manager for the Economic and Workforce Department with the City of Los Angeles. Under Ms. Ho's leadership, the Economic and Workforce Development Department distributed $63 million in COVID-19 related financial economic relief programs. So she will share highlights of their experience with relief funds here today. Also, we have Laurie Furstenfeld, And she's co-director of the Legal and Legislative Advocacy Programs at Child Care Law Center. In this role, Laurie has crafted policies that increase the availability of affordable, enriching childcare. As a fellow member of the California EC Coalition, Laurie has been keeping us informed about how the state of California has been investing in relief funds. So today she will share highlights of that information with us. And last but not least, Olivia Barrow, policy manager at Low Income Investment Fund. And she has provided analysis of complex policy issues and built coalitions of diverse stakeholders, including the National Children's Facilities Network. She's co-author of the brief that inspired the creation of this webinar, which has the same title, by the way, and it will be shared with all participants in the follow-up email. She will also share information about the Week of Action that's being coordinated by the National Children's Facilities Network. So let's get started. I want to kick off this conversation with some voices from the field. We will show a video of a home-based childcare provider, Maria Garzo, owner of Ellie's Family Daycare.
Soy Maria Garzo. Me comprometí.
I'm Maria Garzo, and I'm committed to studying and getting a license to take care of children. I provide care to children from 2 months to 14. I'm very happy. It helped me tremendously, and I've used the funds to pay my rent, for my food, my bills, and to spend my life. I bought sanitizers, I bought masks, I bought things for the bathroom. We need a lot of money for a daycare, and that's why we work hard. There are no kids for us. Actually, everything is very slow. Everybody is without work, and the capital from 1 year ago to now has really diminished. And I thank you as an organization for providing us that opportunity, for giving us very good financial help. Thank you very much.
This is only one of the hundreds of providers who benefited from the relief funds by the city of LA. So Carolyn, I want to invite you to come on the screen and share with us about how the pandemic affected the city and how relief funds were allocated for childcare providers and any other funds that are what future plans you have regarding the relief funds. So.
All right. Hello, I'm Carolyn Hull, and as indicated earlier, I'm the general manager for the Economic and Workforce Development Department for the City of Los Angeles. The goal of the department is to develop and implement programs and projects that yield thriving businesses and create job training and career opportunities for the City of Los Angeles. The worldwide pandemic has had a negative impact on regional economies throughout the world. And in fact, at the end of 2019, the total employment of LA County reached 4.5 million, with an unemployment rate of 4.4%. By September of 2020, COVID-19 had devastated the economy. The region lost 9.8%, nearly 10% of its jobs. In the first 2 months of the Safer at Home order, over 716,000 jobs were lost. Nearly 30% of these jobs have been recovered, but analysis shows that it will take probably into 2024, and recent updates due to the rise of the Delta variant indicate that it may take longer into 2025 to regain the 392,000 living wage jobs lost during the pandemic. In order to put this into context, we need to understand that the pandemic was particularly hard on small businesses. And in Los Angeles County, 93% of businesses are small businesses with less than 20 employees. And as of November, at the end of 2020, there was at least 15,000 businesses in LA reporting permanent or temporary closures. And as you can imagine, this hit certain industry sectors particularly hard. Some sectors that were particularly hard hit were the amusement, gambling and recreation, accommodation, restaurants, hotels, motion picture and sound recording, and individual and family services such as hair salons. As the pandemic progressed, there was a sharp decline in the number of childcare spots, another sector that was hard hit by the pandemic. These childcare spots throughout the region closed as many individuals and providers had less money, took on more risks, and as a result, waves of childcare providers started to close. The effect was particularly acute for women of color, many of whom own and work in childcare centers, and mothers who were often left to juggle the demands of childcare and work. City leadership and regional collaboration quickly came together to deal with the effects of what was happening in our region. The confluence of an unexpected economic shocks to our region's economy was met with the strong leadership of Mayor Eric Garcetti's administration and the City Council. Specifically, City of LA Council President Laurie Martinez championed a grant program for licensed child care providers to combat some of the issues that we saw with the child care centers closing. In addition, since the virus had no boundaries, the solution also had to disregard the governmental demarcations. So we developed in the city of Los Angeles a regional COVID recovery fund. And I think the Mayor Garcetti said it best when he indicated that the fund was a tribute to the power of our partnership between the city and the county to deliver financial relief, vital aid, and tools for recovery to the small businesses and workers who form the backbone of our economy. That partnership led to the city of Los Angeles creating a plethora of COVID-19 recovery programs. I want to just say that the ecosystem throughout the city and the region led us to working with not just other government entities, but with community development financial institutions such as LIFT and LIFT, philanthropic organizations. We delved into our youth source and workforce and business source centers so we could develop and provide programs that would help individual and businesses through this pandemic. Some of the programs that the city provided, immediately when the pandemic hit in March, I said by April, the city of Los Angeles had developed a loan program, which we later converted to a grant of $11.7 million. Those funds went out to 832 small businesses. And then there was the sidewalk vendors who were particularly hard hit. The mayor and city council developed in conjunction with EWDD a program that put over $2 million in grants to sidewalk vendors. And then some of our programs, and this is just a sample of them, that helped individuals that had lost their jobs through COVID-19 were offered temporary jobs that paid up to $22 an hour. We helped more than 600 individuals get temporary employment. The LA Regional COVID Fund was the culmination of our efforts in terms of partnership and regional collaboration. In joint effort between the city, the county, CDFIs such as LISC, along with institutional and corporate philanthropy, the fund provided financial relief to small businesses, nonprofits, and micro-entrepreneurs affected by COVID-19. And I think you heard earlier that the city of Los Angeles itself put out $63 million in both federal CARES dollars and our own local funds. But the regional fund, which was completely federal dollars, combined funding from the county, the CARES funds that went to the county and the city. And we were happy to report that we distributed nearly $100 million to micro-entrepreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofits across LA County. It assisted over 7,000 businesses and nearly 20,000 employees. It was important as we developed these programs that we took an equity lens in grant making, and applicants were prioritized based on a set of criteria, including being located in high unemployment census tracts. As we talked about earlier, childcare was particularly hard hit during the pandemic. And quality childcare is an essential ingredient for the labor force of the Los Angeles region and throughout the United States. And in fact, 16% of the US workforce, representing 27 million workers, rely on childcare services. And a study done by the Brookings Institute indicates that not only is it important so that women and men can be in the workforce, but it also has multiplier effects. In California, every dollar spent on childcare and early education yields more than $2 in economic output. So it's just simply good business to support childcare. I'm going to skip over this and talk a little bit about the program that we developed. It takes a village, and the City of Los Angeles partnered with LIF to develop and implement a program that gave grants to licensed childcare providers. And I have this timeline up because I just want to show how quickly we all mobilized with our partners. So in September, I believe we maybe entered the contract in late September of 2020. And by December of 2020, we had completed and scored, and I give all the credit to LIF in this regard, scored over 700 eligible applications. It's phenomenal. It only could be done through the partnership with the CDFI and other philanthropic organizations. The grant applications were designed with equity in mind. The applications were in Korean and Spanish. We differentiated applications for family child care homes and centers, and applicants in high-need census tracts and those serving special populations scored higher. The result was that the CARES grant supported roughly 10,000 children in the city of Los Angeles. And as indicated, we provided funding to almost over 700 early care and educational programs. The equity lens was so important, and we focused on high-need children and families in the city. And I just want to conclude by saying that really what we learned during this pandemic is that it takes a village, and partnerships are critical to getting grants and federal dollars out the door to the people, the right people at the right time. And as we move forward, we're not out of the woods yet, and childcare is still critical in our recovery. We are working with the federal government and with our philanthropic partners and CDFIs for round 2 of funding for childcare providers. And thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for sharing some highlights of your experience. Especially want to highlight that really truly takes a village, right? And the equity lens are super important. So for all participants, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom to share them. And we will answer both at the end of this roundtable. The last 15 minutes will be for questions and answers, but also panelists will have opportunity to answer your questions in writing in the Q&A feature. So talking about equity and talking about collaboration and partnership, it's my pleasure to invite to join us on the screen, Laurie. And Laurie has been a great partner in the California ECE Coalition. And she's going to share with us information about how the relief funds are being invested here in California, and the equity lens that has been used and we should be used moving forward as we invest these funds. Laurie, with you.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I believe every child has the right to be healthy and happy. Every parent has the right to provide for their family with dignity. And childcare providers have the right to be paid a living wage and be treated with the utmost respect. When we tragically witnessed a police officer slowly torture and murder George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, communities across the country and around the world, Black, brown, and many white, released a groundswell of public rage about the way Black people are policed and murdered. This trauma most of us experienced in watching this video also sparked a deeper conversation about the way we experience all aspects of our lives and question the status quo we've all been operating under for years. For childcare in California, We have made remarkable strides toward creating equitable policies in recent years. Through the budget, we passed true 12-month eligibility, CalWORK stage reform, and we passed SB 234, where family child care providers, many of whom are women of color and immigrants, no longer need to go under the arduous, burdensome zoning and business license process, and landlords can no longer refuse to rent to them or evict them because they are family child care providers. But despite these monumental successes, thousands of families still languish on child care waiting lists. Parents can't afford the family fees and co-payments to keep their care, and parents are cut off from care when they need it most. Why is this so? We need to acknowledge many of our child care policies and impacts of them are a manifestation of systemic racism that dates back to slavery, when Black women were forced and tortured to care for other families' children without any pay. And many of our child care policies are born out of this tragic legacy. How do we change the policies that we have now to make them more just? Well, it takes a lot of money, and the federal government has made a historic investment in childcare with the COVID relief dollars, over $50 billion. California has this opportunity to make bold, long-lasting changes to stop putting Band-Aids on problems, eradicate unjust policies that hurt children and parents. The Administration for Children and Families is encouraging states to do so. We need to create new, sustaining, equitable policies so that families, women, children, child care providers, everybody touched by childcare can thrive. So I have broken the cardinal PowerPoint rule by making my slides very content heavy. I will not break the rule by reading them verbatim, but I wanted you all to have some details to leave this conversation with. And these slides will be available after this is finished. So I hope that these details are helpful to all of you. We also have some more detailed charts and memos on our website. The link is at the bottom of this slide, childcarelaw.org. So first, I'll start with saying that California received over $5 billion in federal COVID relief funds, and that these dollars are split up between three major pots of money. There's the CARES Act money, which was received at the beginning of the pandemic, the SRSA money that was received, or that was passed at the end of this last year, December 2020, and then there's the ARPA money that was recently released in March. Now, we don't know the full breakdown of all the federal dollars. We are not, the state budget does not delineate the exact allocation specifically for the ARPA money, but we are working with our colleagues and policymakers to learn more about how this specific pot of money will be used. I do want to say that all these pots of money have tremendous flexibility to reach providers and parents, and much of it is allowed to reach providers who are not paid with subsidies. Then there's the SRSA money that was negotiated by our beloved Child Care Providers Union in February. Here are the major components of some of the money that was used, the $402 million in the beginning. I want to highlight one of the main points that the feedback we heard from the field was the importance of being paid the non-operating days, because we know that so many childcare providers had to close and they weren't paid for the days when they were closed due to sickness and quarantines. We also have the CARES Act money, which I said was released at the beginning of the pandemic. We do believe most of this money has been allocated. We're unclear if it's been fully used, but we do know that a lot of this money did receive families and parents immediately, particularly with regard to the family fees. When those were frozen, that was instant money back into the pockets of parents, and was provided that child care providers be paid the full amount of the subsidy, including the family fee. Child care providers were also paid for their non-operation days. And importantly, there were vouchers available for essential workers who did not need to income qualify, who needed child care right away, and that was affordable during the pandemic. Now, this is the money that of our child care trailer budget bill, which is AB 131. It is the bill that allocates the money for childcare in our state. And I haven't included everything in the bill, but I am highlighting the main buckets of money that were highlighted in it. I want to point your attention to the stipends, bullet point 3. These stipends will be available to all childcare providers. And this is important because last year, providers who are not paid with subsidies, who were still very much so struggling to stay open and keep operating, caring for children, providers not paid with subsidies receive very little assistance. And these stipends are available to them with this, in this budget bill, these stipends. There was also the historic increase in childcare subsidy rates. As I mentioned, in California, family childcare providers and family friend and neighbor providers now have the right to collectively bargain with the administration in California. And this was their first year. CCPU had made some monumental successes with these negotiations with EC advocates' support. And what they were asking for in large part was reflective of what all providers were asking for, and many of these provisions that were negotiated will benefit the entire field. And another portion I wanted to highlight is the infrastructure grants, as that Olivia will go more into detail about infrastructure grants. But I wanted to highlight that with all these this great influx of vouchers for childcare, we need places to put children, and many childcare providers need this money in order to modernize and update their facilities in order to comply with new COVID rules with social distancing and ensuring that children are healthy and safe. We also have this federal reconciliation bill that we've all been hearing about that's being negotiated at the federal level. Which is $3.5 trillion. It looks like I'm running up against time, but I will just say quickly that these are the main portions of the bill that are being negotiated: the Child Care for Working Families Act, American Families Plan, and American Jobs Plan. And you can review these slides when they're sent out to you to look at the specifics about them. But one of the main points is that childcare is expected to be more affordable for families who earn low and middle incomes, to pay no more than 7% of their income. Those are some of the main points we're hearing about. And lastly, these are recommendations that we're hearing from the field that we've heard in the last couple of years. And I wanted to note that the California Department of Social Services has been very interested in hearing the priorities of childcare providers throughout California. We just completed a number of focus groups, and I'm really excited to hear that policymakers, state agencies are really willing to do a lot with this federal money and make lasting changes and uplift the priorities of the providers and parents and what they're asking for in order to create a childcare system that is just and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Great information. And again, to all participants, we are going to send these slides to you all after. And I want to thank Laurie for highlighting the victories of the Childcare Providers United. Big shout out to our friends, family childcare providers, and congratulations and for the victory of increasing the reimbursement rate in California. And this shows one more time how unions are important. And family childcare providers was, as we heard from Carolyn, were one of the main recipients of relief funds in the city of LA. And we had the pleasure to interview one of them, Miss Patt, and we are going to show a short video of the interview where she shares how she invested the funds in her house to upgrade. Like Laurie said, they need some upgrades. So.
Game I use it for the new toy, getting one of the bathroom where the kids use, getting that whole bathroom remodeled for operation, getting a few more people to come in here, making sure everything was clean, because we had to clean more than, like every hour we had to clean everything, because when you got kids, they touch things from behind each other. So we had to make sure everything was properly clean.
So we have this and other short videos on the Low Income Investment Fund website. We have an easy story bank, and it has been a pleasure to participate in these interviews and conducting some of these interviews with providers. I now want to invite Olivia to join me on the screen. Olivia is one of the authors of the brief on how to invest for relief funds and also ARPA funds, including that, and facilities. So Olivia, it's with you.
Great, thanks, Erica. And can you see my slides all right and hear me all right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Erica, again, and hello, everyone. It's great to be with you today. My name is Olivia Barrow, and I am the Federal Policy Manager at the Low Income Investment Fund, or LIF. And we are a National Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI. And as a CDFI, that essentially means we function like a nonprofit bank, but with an explicit focus on financing community development projects that traditional financial institutions and traditional banks have historically not served or not prioritized. And so in addition to affordable housing, which is one of the main asset classes that CDFIs are known for, LIF actually has a very deep focus on supporting the early care and education sector. And we specifically emphasize this physical spaces where childcare providers are operating their businesses and where children are going to learn and grow. But unfortunately, physical spaces have often gone underemphasized and under-resourced in our country. And so to help elevate the importance of childcare facilities at a broader national level, LIF has taken on the responsibility of co-chairing the National Children's Facilities Network, NCFN, which is a coalition of more than 40 CDFIs and other childcare stakeholders who are all focused on improving childcare facilities and strengthening childcare business models. So that's the lens from which I'm going to approach this conversation today. And I wanted to start off with this very high level framing of how the federal government has historically invested in childcare facilities. And really that is to say that they haven't. There are no dedicated federal resources to acquire, construct, or majorly renovate childcare facilities. CCDBG, which is the primary childcare subsidy resource at a federal level, does have some flexibilities for tribes to invest in major renovations and major construction. But other than that, states can only direct CCDBG resources to minor renovation and repair projects. I will note Head Start does have some additional flexibility to use federal resources for more of their facility related needs. But as a whole, the childcare sector has been incredibly underfunded, underinvested for decades. And so it's sort of unrealistic to assume that states or providers are going to want to direct such limited operating resources to what are often very costly facility or maintenance needs. And then even when subsidy resources are directed towards facilities, there are limitations on eligible uses that prevent providers from really meeting the full range of facility or maintenance needs that they may have. There is some good news though. So recently, as a result of the pandemic, we have seen a much greater emphasis on the importance of facilities and the importance of high quality physical spaces. But as everyone here today knows, the light that's been shined on the sector has only illuminated very serious quality and supply issues. In our space, we often cite a 2015 report by the Office of the Inspector General that found that 96% of childcare programs across the country that are serving federally subsidized children had at least one potentially hazardous condition. So that could include things like steel pipes poking out of the ground or even unsafe electrical outlets. And then in addition to these serious health and safety challenges, there is simply nowhere close to the amount of supply necessary to really meet the need for quality care across the country. So the situation for our childcare facilities and our childcare ecosystem is pretty dire. But like I said, the good news is that we are starting to get some increased attention on this issue as a result of the pandemic. So this slide is a pretty high level overview of the childcare resources that have already been enacted. I included some notes here about some of the specific flexibilities that have been allowed as a result of the pandemic to specifically address some of the facilities and space improvements. I'm not going to go into detail here. It's been touched on by some of my colleagues, but I do just want to reiterate that the pandemic has brought facilities to the forefront of the conversation in a way that we really haven't seen before, and that is a really important progress for us to acknowledge. But at the same time, there's still a long ways to go before we have the resources necessary to meet the need. And so that's why it's really important that our state and local lawmakers are looking for opportunities to supplement childcare funding sources with other resources that may not be traditionally thought of in the childcare space. I think over the last year and a half, one of the main sources we've seen utilized is the state and local fiscal relief. There's been about $500 billion in state and local fiscal relief enacted since the beginning of the pandemic, and it can be deployed for relatively flexible uses. We already heard one example from my colleague Carolyn about the city of Los Angeles partnering with Lyft to deploy over $11 million in federal CARES Act funding to support childcare providers. This was an incredible example of a locality really making the decision to direct some of its federal resources towards childcare and supplement the resources that are specific to childcare. And I think emphasizing here the model of using an intermediary like Lyft to deploy these funds means that we are able to use the public sector's resources to leverage additional sources of both public and private capital. And that allows us to really increase the total pie of funding that we have for childcare, for the system, rather than just relying on public resources to finance 100% of the need. Stretching our dollars is a much more effective way to invest in these deep challenges. Before I wrap up, I just wanted to make sure to quickly touch on what's coming next. We still do not have federal resources explicitly dedicated to the acquisition, construction, and major renovation of childcare facilities. And that is a major oversight for children and families and teachers across the country, and something that we feel very strongly Congress needs to make a priority. Laurie already touched on the fact that Congress is working on a $3.5 trillion social spending package right now. As Laurie said, we do expect it to include child care priorities, which we again should just take a moment to acknowledge is a really fantastic and long overdue display of support for this sector. But at the same time, it's not clear yet if childcare facilities will be explicitly included in this upcoming package. And I want to make sure that everyone is very clear that President Biden has actually called for a $25 billion investment to upgrade early learning facilities. And that was part of his American Jobs Plan, which is the infrastructure spending package he announced back in March. So it is urgent that advocates are making sure Congress follows through on the president's request for these specific acquisition, construction, and renovation resources. We do know that congressional committees are drafting their reconciliation bill text right now as we speak. And we suspect bill markups are going to begin next week. So this is an absolutely critical moment for advocacy. NCFN, which is the National Children's Facilities Network that LIFT co-chairs, we are hosting a Child Care Facilities Week of Action, both this week and next week, really encouraging stakeholders to mobilize in support of childcare facilities. So the link on this slide will take you to more information. It includes graphics for social media and a letter that you can sign and send to your elected officials. I encourage you to take a look at that and share widely with your networks. And then, of course, in addition to NCFN's Week of Action, there are ongoing weeks of action and days of action hosted by other partners and stakeholders in the sector that we always encourage our partners to participate in. So this slide just has some resources for everyone to browse when you get the slides in your inbox. And then, of course, my contact information is listed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thanks for highlighting all this great information. And with that, I will invite everybody to join, all the speakers to join us on the screen as we debate, discuss some of the questions that are coming up and some of the information you all share during these last minutes. So let's have Carolyn with us too, if possible. Yay. Okay, because Carolyn, for you goes to the first question. I know I saw in the chat, folks are excited and sharing a lot of questions and comments. And I want just for you to share like the plans for additional relief funds, how you're planning, how is the city planning to invest these funds in childcare and next steps. So just to highlight that piece again.
Well, thank you. We really see that the recovery needs additional resources put toward childcare providers. So the City Council and the Mayor have approved $2.5 million in CDBG CV funds, so it's CDBG coronavirus funds, that will be put toward assisting childcare providers in the recovery period that can be used for essentially the same types of uses, such as their rent and getting PPE. That program, we're putting together the partnerships and determining that we'll probably launch it. I'm hopeful we'll launch it by the end of October. I'm fairly confident that we can hit that goal.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carolyn. Talking about funds, Olivia, can you share the actions we need to take this week and next week? Perhaps the website, can you highlight a little bit more of that?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat, but just broadly what folks should be prepared to do is engage on social media, contact your elected officials, and really raise up the point that childcare facilities cannot be left behind as we consider big, bold investments to build back better. If our children and our teachers do not have places to go to learn and to teach, we're going to continue to be constrained by serious supply and quality challenges. So I will go ahead and put the link in the chat and encourage folks to weigh in over social media and directly with your elected officials. And always feel free to contact me if you have any specific questions. I'm happy to support in that advocacy.
Thank you, Olivia. And Laurie, there's on the chat the conversation about TK and how it's impacting our field. TK, for the ones that don't know, especially from other states, is transitional kindergarten, and it's basically universal preschool, 1 year, additional year before kindergarten. And this year in the state budget, it was made official that we will be enrolling universal transitional kindergarten in the upcoming years. And this is impacting facilities, childcare providers in general, in our field, and only as an example of other areas, other geographies where this happened before, we see as the low-income investment fund, we see that the investment in facilities is shifted for providers to adapt their facilities to infant and toddlers, right? as that demand increase and we have the public sector providing the universal preschool the 1 year before kindergarten. So Laurie, I'm wondering about your perspective on the impact of traditional kindergarten in the field, and then also the relief funds and how are these playing, the TK is playing a role in the impact on our field, and then potential relief funds being used for that too.
Yes, thank you, Ericka. So I'll start with the last question. In AB 130 and in the general budget bill, it reflects that TK expansion is mostly going to be funded with state funds. However, we have not seen a complete breakdown of all the federal COVID relief money, so I can't say for certain none of it's not going to TK expansion, but we will see. As far as the impact of the expansion of TK, where the state has now changed the definition of a 4-year-old so that all 4-year-olds will be eligible for TK and LEA-based setting, and that's universal TK without any cost. So this has a tremendous impact on not just providers, but on parents and children as well, where many children are believed, parents feel like their children are not ready for a school campus, and it doesn't fit the schedule of many parents who are working. And so, well, also, of course, it impacts the childcare providers because they'll be losing many of the 4-year-olds and they have to readjust their programs. So it's an ecosystem and it's going to have a ripple effect throughout. What we have been advocating for with many of you is an implementation of this universal TK expansion is ensuring that it's a mixed delivery approach where any parent who has a 4-year-old can choose the ECE setting of their choice, meaning like a family childcare home, a community-based center, and they're not forced to choose the only one that's available to them, which would be a school setting under this current policy.
Thank you, Laurie. Olivia, how's the ARPA funds? What are the guidelines regarding the use of that fund, especially ARPA on facilities? I know you touched base on that, but if you can share a little bit more about that, that's one question that came up.
Yeah, I saw that question come through from Eileen, and that's something I'm going to have to look into to get a little bit more specific information for you, which I'm happy to do. So far, we have seen federal guidance sort of coming out at different clips and different paces. And so that is something that we all have to keep a close eye on. Obviously, the way the federal legislation is written provides relatively broad flexibility for the use of these funds, but then as the Treasury Department determines how to implement and how to determine the details of distributing funds, there are additional guidelines and technicalities that we have to make sure to look closely at. So I will happily find additional information on that, and perhaps we can send it around as part of follow-up.
Thank you. And one more question for Carolyn. Carolyn, I think in the chat there were some questions about if private providers are eligible for the grants, the relief grants, and also if you have any insights on how providers perhaps outside of Los Angeles can learn about opportunities to receive grants. If you talk with other cities around the greater Los Angeles area, and if you know of any that are also providing relief funds to childcare providers.
Well, thank you for that. We are currently in the process of putting together our guidelines. As many of you know, the City Council and the Mayor have approved $37 million in ARPA funds for the comeback checks that will be going out to small businesses. The $12 million will be for rent relief, and the remainder will be for other small businesses and restaurants. Check our website on the guidelines, as we're actually literally putting them together as we speak, because we intend on opening up that portal for small businesses by the end of September, the first week of October. So I don't want to give wrong information, but stay tuned. And if you also need additional technical support, please reach out, go to our website and look at our business source centers, which will be providing technical assistance. In terms of other programs that are in nearby cities, I would say the county as well. Looking at my counterparts at the county, we're in conversations with them on a regular basis, and I know they too are putting together program guidelines that will allow local cities in the area to apply. It's really important that we continue that regional effort so that we provide support to the region.
Thank you so much. So I just want also to make a plug here for Build Up California membership, because we are going, as a network, we are going to be spreading information about these grant opportunities. So if you would like to stay informed, please go to our website, buildupcalifornia.org, click on membership, fill up the form, and we will start our membership activities in the upcoming month. Events exclusive for members, learning communities, and we will be sending alerts about grant opportunities, especially for facilities, but in general for our EC community in California. And around the country, I would motivate everybody to join the National Children's Facilities Network. There is a lot of information that we share in that with the members of that organization. And Olivia does a great job coordinating all of that. And I definitely would motivate everybody to go to National Children's Facilities Network, ncfn.org, and sign up to become a member too. With that, I want to thank all the panel members and ask if you have any final remarks, any final insights that you didn't have an opportunity to share so far. All good. Okay, so I want to use this opportunity to invite everybody to join us in our upcoming roundtables. This is only the first of a weekly roundtable series. The next one will be next Thursday, September 9th at lunchtime, 12 noon. We are going to have another great panel with us of experts talking about how to plan for childcare facilities. And we will have others that also other roundtables, and the list can be found on our website, buildupcalifornia.org, buildupca.org. So thanks again, everybody, and thank you for the great information. We will be sending these slides to all of you and related publications by email, maximum tomorrow, and together with the recording that you can share with your networks and for all the attendees that had to leave early. So thank you so much, Carolyn, Olivia, Laurie. Thanks for the crew, the technical crew that made us this webinar possible. And with that, it's a wrap. See you in the next roundtables.